This is Land of Havilah, 1 Chronicles 26. Coming up, Korah was one of Levi's great-grandsons. He lived during the time of the Exodus, and famously he led a rebellion against Moses, Numbers chapter 16. Afterward, Yahweh caused the ground to open up, swallowing Korah and his fellow rebels, and Yahweh closed the ground back on them. That wasn't the end of Korah's family line, though, because some of his sons were doorkeepers at the tabernacle and continued in that capacity at least 900 years, all the way through the time of David, and after that, they were even still serving after the return from the Babylonian exile, 1 Chronicles 9:19. In the time of David, they had already been at it about 400 years, keeping the doors at the tabernacle. And when David was making plans to shut down the tabernacle and build the temple, he affirmed the Korahites in their traditional doorkeeping role. They guarded the gates of the tabernacle and temple, probably functioning something like bouncers or security guards. Coming up, a partial list of the Korahite doorkeepers. Those doorkeepers descended from Korah, who were affirmed by David. Verse 1. For the divisions of the doorkeepers, of the Korahites, Meshelemiah the son of Korah, of the sons of Asaph. Meshelemiah had sons, Zechariah the firstborn, Jediael the second, Zebediah the third, Jothniel the fourth, Elam the fifth, Jehohanan the sixth, Elioenai the seventh. Obed-Edom had sons, Shemaiah the firstborn, Jehozabad the second, Joah the third, Sakkar the fourth, Nethanel the fifth, Amiel the sixth, Issachar the seventh, Peulathai the eighth, for God blessed him. Sons were also born to Shemaiah his son, who ruled over the house of his father, for they were mighty men of valor. The sons of Shemaiah, Othni, Raphael, Obed, and Elzabad, whose brothers were valiant men, Elihu and Shemachiah. All these were the sons of Obed-Edom, they and their sons and their brothers, able men in strength for the service, 62 of Obed-Edom. Meshelemiah had sons and brothers, valiant men, 18. Comment, that was 18 from the family of Meshelemiah and 62 from the family of Obed-Edom, and going further back in their ancestry, all of them were descended from Korah and Korah's great-grandfather Levi. There were about 23 contemporary names given, and if we crunch the numbers given, there were about 57 others who weren't named, all of them doorkeepers. Coming up, doorkeepers from another of Levi's sons, verse 10. Also Hosa of the children of Merari had sons, Shimri the chief, for though he was not the firstborn, yet his father made him chief, Hilkiah the second, Tebaliah the third, and Zechariah the fourth. All the sons and brothers of Hosa were 13. Of these were the divisions of the doorkeepers, even of the chief men, having offices like their brothers to minister in Yahweh's house. Comment, there were 5 doorkeepers by name there, and another 8 indicated by number, all from Merari, one of the 3 sons of Levi. So in the chapter there are about 28 Levites named as active doorkeepers, but David planned to assign 4,000 to that role, 1 Chronicles 23:5. In verse 12, the ones just named were the chief men of the divisions of the doorkeepers, so apparently the 4,000 belonged to divisions, each division being headed by one of the chiefs just mentioned. Coming up, doorkeepers will be stationed at the temple courtyard gates on the east, west, north, and south, plus at the temple storehouses, verse 13. They cast lots, the small as well as the great, according to their fathers' houses, for every gate. The lot eastward fell to Shelemiah. Then for Zechariah his son, a wise counselor, they cast lots, and his lot came out northward, to Obed-Edom southward, and to his sons the storehouse, to Shuppim and Hosa westward, by the gate of Sheleketh, at the causeway that goes up, watchman opposite watchman. Eastward were 6 Levites, northward 4 a day, southward 4 a day, and for the storehouses 2 and 2. For Parbar westward 4 at the causeway, and 2 at Parbar. These were the divisions of the doorkeepers, of the sons of the Korahites and of the sons of Merari. Comment, Parbar in verse 18 is an untranslated word because the meaning of it's lost, so it's just Parbar, which is Hebrew with no attempt at English translation. From the context, it was apparently some type of structure on the temple grounds, some type of landmark there. Coming up, moving on from keeping the doors, the Levites who will keep the treasury. Verse 20. Of the Levites, Ahijah was over the treasures of God's house and over the treasures of the dedicated things. The sons of Ladan, the sons of the Gershonites belonging to Ladan, the heads of the fathers' households belonging to Ladan the Gershonite, Jehieli. The sons of Jehieli, Zetham and Joel his brother, over the treasures of Yahweh's house. Of the Amramites, of the Isharites, of the Hebronites, of the Uzzielites, and Shebuel the son of Gershom, the son of Moses, was ruler over the treasures. His brothers of Eliezer, Rehabiah his son, and Jeshaiah his son, and Joram his son, and Zichri his son, and Shelomoth his son. This Shelomoth and his brothers were over all the treasures of the dedicated things which David the king and the heads of the fathers' households, the captains over thousands and hundreds, and the captains of the army had dedicated. They dedicated some of the plunder won in battles to repair Yahweh's house. All that Samuel the seer, and Saul the son of Kish, and Abner the son of Ner, and Joab the son of Zeruiah had dedicated, whoever had dedicated anything, it was under the hand of Shelomoth and of his brothers. Comment in verse 20, the Levite Ahijah was the top treasury official. In subsequent verses, there were two main branches of the treasury. One of them was the office of dedicated things. In verses 26 to 28, the bulk of the dedicated things originated as plunder taken in war. These vast amounts were dedicated by high officials such as Samuel, Saul, Abner, and Joab in verse 28, and David in verse 26, and totaled no telling how much, but it was over $7 billion in today's money, 1 Chronicles 29:4, which was the amount that David alone dedicated in gold. As verse 27 indicated, the dedicated things also included whatever came from the public, quote, from whomever had dedicated anything, end quote. By the law of Moses in Leviticus chapter 23, the public could dedicate virtually anything to Yahweh, including animals, lands, houses, and silver. This all had to be administered by the receiving officials of the treasury. In verse 26, Shelomoth and his relatives were over the office of the dedicated things. Their ancestry traced back to Moses and Moses' great-grandfather Levi. The second major branch of the treasury was the treasures of Yahweh's house in verse 22, headed by Jehieli and his sons Zetham and Joel, whose ancestry went back to Levi through Levi's son Gershom. There's some guesswork involved because the ancestries are incomplete and the wording sometimes ambiguous, and even searching the names electronically throughout the Bible, we still have gaps in our knowledge, so please understand your narrator's making some assumptions and inferences here and there, which may be incorrect. Now a quick line about Levite judges and other officers, then more about the treasury. Verse 29. Of the Isharites, Chenaniah and his sons were for the outward business over Israel, for officers and judges. Of the Hebronites, Hashabiah and his brothers, men of valor, 1,700, had the oversight of Israel beyond the Jordan westward, for all the business of Yahweh and for the service of the king. Of the Hebronites was Jerijah the chief, even of the Hebronites, according to their generations by fathers' households. They were sought for in the 40th year of the reign of King David, and mighty men of valor were found among them at Jazer of Gilead. His brothers, men of valor, were 2,700 heads of fathers' households, whom King David made overseers over the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half-tribe of the Manassites, for every matter pertaining to God and for the affairs of the king. Comment in verses 30 to 32, there's a description of the administration of the office of the treasury in regions beyond the Jordan River, which were the territories of the tribe of Reuben on the south, the half-tribe of Manasseh on the north, and the tribe of Gad in between. These tribes bordered foreign nations such as Moab, Ammon, and Syria, and at times were invaded and subjugated by those nations, but David took care of all that, 2 Samuel 8. In verse 31, Jazer was a city in that region. It was in the territory of the tribe of Gad originally, Numbers 32:35, but Gad gave that city to the Levites, Joshua 21:39, and during the census of David, he counted the city of Jazer, 2 Samuel 24:5, so we know Israel controlled it during that time. In verse 31 that we just read, David's officials went looking in Jazer and identified a group of Hebronites living there, Hebron being a grandson of Levi. So these were Levites who were unknown to the officials in Jerusalem, apparently who had been cut off from Israel for a number of years because of foreign domination. David and his men recruited these newly identified Levites to be treasury officials in that region, quote, for every matter pertaining to God and for the affairs of the king, end quote. 1 Chronicles 27 is next.